huge congratulations, Diana Gabaldon, the Great Scot Award. Diana, we cannot thank you enough. I'm here at the big house. I am Jamie Fraser, or I'm Sam Heughan. I play Jamie Fraser. Those of you who don't know, Jamie Fraser obviously has been in Diana's mind. He's been talking to her for many, many years. We've been shooting the show for 10 years. I feel very fortunate to play this character and also to call Diana my friend. Diana, really proud of you. I'm sorry we can't be there to celebrate with you. I'll send you some whiskey, my Sassenach, and much love from everyone on Outlander. Congratulations again.
Good evening. I'm Graham McTavish. As you can see, I am not with you. I am speaking to you from, well, looks like a cupboard, really, here in London, where I am currently working. And that is the reason that, sadly, I'm not able to be with you in person to speak to you about my dear friend, Diana Gabaldon. Now, Diana, this may come as a shock. Diana is not, in fact, Scottish. No, she's not. Now, I imagine that some of you imagine that she sits in a thatched cottage, perhaps, with a peat fire roaring in the background, knitting, and in between knitting incredible garments, she's writing best-selling novels about Scotland. But no, this is not the case. She lives in Arizona. Now, nobody can deny that Diana herself has done more than almost anyone to promote Scotland, its history and its culture on the world stage over the last, well, decade or more. And for that reason alone, I think, and I'm sure you'll agree, that Diana is surely an honorary Scot. And actually now a great one. Yes. How does it feel, by the way, Diana, to be a great Scot? Yes, I'd be very interested to find out. Now, Jamie and Claire Fraser, who you may have heard of, they sprung from Diana's imagination in a sort of fully formed state and have come to embody the story of 18th century Scottish people for millions and millions and millions of readers all over the world. Now, their move from the Highlands to Fraser's Ridge, which, as you all know, is in North Carolina, is echoed in the family history of so many ex-Scots or expatriate Scots who have come over from Scotland to settle in a new world. For many reasons, the clearances, some of them simply just decided that they wanted a new life. People like my own family, some of whom actually ended up in Canada. Now, those people and the people that are still in Scotland have found that Outlander is a deep and profound connection to their ancestry and their heritage. As a Scot myself, it's been particularly gratifying to bring Diana's story, rooted in all of that history, to life and to share it, well, with people like you. I've been able to film in places that historically were the setting for many, many extraordinary events in Scottish history, Culloden Battlefield being possibly the most obvious. And these many, many places are cared for future generations by the National Trust for Scotland. And of course, I can't make a speech like this without mentioning my fellow countryman and, well, comrade, Sam Heughan. He of the ginger hair, he of the kilt. Yes, Jamie Fraser himself. Now, as you know, or may not know, Sam and I have done a couple of things ourselves that have sprung from Outlander, most notably our Men in Kilts series and our books, Clanlands and the Clanlands Almanac. Shameless plug. Please go out and buy them immediately. They are, in part, due to all of the wonderful, wonderful creations that Diana has come out with. And it's been a great pleasure and privilege for me to be able to immerse myself in Scottish history and find more about the country that I come from. And again, all roads lead back in this example to Diana herself. Now, with 2022 designated as Scotland's Year of Stories, it seems, well, especially fitting to recognise the role that Diana's work has played in bringing Scotland's story to the world stage. I'm proud to present the 2022 Great Scot Award to Diana herself on behalf of the National Trust of Scotland, the foundation in the United States, in acknowledgement of the incredible contribution that Outlander and the series has made to the global understanding and appreciation of Scottish heritage. Now, obviously I wish I could be there in person, partly for the free food and drink, but mainly so that I could give Diana a big hug from one of her greatest fans, Dougal Mackenzie himself, who, my only dispute with Diana's work is, of course, that he was horribly murdered. We'll talk about that another time. But in the meantime, I ask you to put your hands together and congratulate a great Scot, Diana Gabaldon. Solange.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, you know what actors are like. If you let them talk without a script, they just go on and on. Still, my great thanks to both Sam and Graham, who are dear friends, and we've known each other for 10 plus years by this time, and got very much accustomed to each other, I think. But they are both great Scots themselves, very much devoted to the cause of, Scotland's heritage and the preservation of its welfare. So I'm very pleased to have been introduced by them. And thank you so much. I'm very honored to be given this award tonight and to be here with all of you. And everyone's been very kind when I came in. Everyone, when they found out who I was, they all come up and say, "Are you Scottish?" And when I admit that no, alas, I'm not. Half of my heritage is from Yorkshire and Germany, and the other half is Hispanic from Spain via New Mexico. Hence the last name, which if we were speaking Spanish would be Gabaldon. If it's English, it's Gabaldon, so, don't worry about it. It rhymes with stone either way. Yes. Anyway, the next question that I get is, so how did you come to write a book about Scotland, given that you're not Scots and all that? And I said, well, it all started with a man in a kilt, as, things often do. Yeah. In fact, I had wanted to be a novelist from a very early age, when I was 8 or so. But I came from a very conservative family background. And my father would say to me frequently, "You're such a poor judge of character, you're bound to marry some bum," he said. So be sure you get a good education so you can support your children. So with this going on at home, I thought perhaps I would not announce that I wanted to write novels, feeling that this was, not financially prudent. And so I became a scientist. I liked science, I was good at it, but I knew I was supposed to be a novelist. And when I turned 35, I said to myself, well, Mozart was dead at 36. Maybe you'd better start. And so on my next birthday, I said, okay, I'm going to start writing a book. It's for practice. I'm not going to show it to anyone. I'm not going to tell anyone what I'm doing. It's just to learn how. And so I said, fine, okay, what kind of book shall I write? Well, novel, but beyond that. And I said, well, for me, perhaps, I was a research professor. I knew my way around a library. I said, historical fiction seems the easiest thing to write. I can look things up. And so I said, all right, where shall I set it? Venice under the Borgias, American Civil War. So I was casting around looking for a good place and time. And I happened to see a really old episode of Doctor Who on public television. This was the second Dr. Patrick Troughton, and I assume many of you, being British, Scottish, or otherwise affiliated, are familiar with Doctor Who, so I won't stop to explain who he is. Anyway, he is a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey, who travels through space and time, picking up companions from periods of Earth's history. And in this very old show, which has to have been filmed, 60 years ago, he had picked up a young Scotsman from 1745, this being a handsome young gentleman who appeared in his kilt. And I said, well, that's kind of fetching. And I found myself still thinking about this the next day in church. And I said, well, you want to write a book, it doesn't matter, where you start. The important thing is pick a point and get going. So I said, fine, Scotland, 18th century. So that's where I began, knowing nothing about Scotland or the 18th century, having no plot, no outline, and no characters, just the very vivid image of a man in a kilt, which turns out to have been enough, as it turns out. A few years later, I went on my first book tour of Germany. I had very kindly been given a international writing award, the Corina Award for International Prize for Fiction, which was very kind of them. And the German publisher had me interviewed by everyone in the German press, one after another, for a week. At the end of this, I was sort of swaying back and forth, but was talking to a nice gentleman from a literary journal, and he was carrying on about how much he loved the books. And I was going, yes, yes, that's fine, go on. And instead, he stopped and said, there is just this one thing. I wonder, could you explain to me what is the appeal of a man in a kilt? Well, I was extremely tired, or I might not have said it, but I just looked at him and I said, I suppose it's the idea that you could be up against a wall with him in a minute. And in case any of you gentlemen were wondering, well, some weeks later, I was at home and got a packet of press clippings from this trip. On top was the interview with this gentleman. I recognized his name. I can read German, but very slowly. But on top, the publisher had written a note in English, and it said, I don't know what you told this man, but I think he is in love with you. Yeah. So anyway, that's where I began with Outlander and so forth. And I won't go on here because it was going to be a long night anyway. But I thank you so much for this. I do want to say one word, though, about, on a more serious note, about Scotland and its history and so forth. I did do a great deal of research, as would be necessary, of course, to cover Scottish history in any depth whatever, no matter what the fictional trappings of it. We want it to be real, and the show, I'm glad to say, is with me in this, and they're very much devoted to accuracy in the historical events and the details of daily life that they do. I'm very much obliged to them. One of those details is use of the Gaelic language, which they used, quite extensively in the first season. Less so since then, but everyone was very gratified by the fact that they did this. Well, when I wrote Outlander, I understood that Gaelic was the tongue, of the Highlands at that time. So I said, well, we need to show that. I, of course, do not speak Gaelic, and in 1986, when I started writing this book, I was in Scottsdale, Arizona, where Gaelic speakers are thin on the ground. So I managed to get hold from a place called Steinhoff's Foreign Books, a Scottish a Gaelic English dictionary. It was about a quarter of an inch thick, but it did have Gaelic words and English words, and that's what I used when I wrote Outlander. Well, comes along another book, and after that one, I got this very nice letter from a gentleman named Ian McKinnon Taylor. And he said, I've been reading your books, and they're fabulous. It's so wonderful to see the history and culture of my country so well represented and all that. He said, I'm also so pleased that you're using Gaelic, but I must tell you that I think you're getting your Gaelic from a dictionary. See, he said, it's not that your words are wrong exactly, but you're not using them grammatically or idiomatically the way that a real Gaelic speaker would. He said, I was born on the Isle of Harris. I am a native Gaelic speaker. Could I offer you my help? And I said, Mr. Taylor, where have you been all my life? So Ian very kindly helped me with the Gaelic for the next several books until his wife had health problems and he was obliged to stop. And after which I have been helped by several other native Gaelic speakers and learners, as they so modestly style themselves, but people who know a great deal more Gaelic than I do. I wanted to tell you, though, and I will try not to mush up too much, but one thing Ian Taylor said to me after we had begun our collaboration, he said, I think Gaelic is a dying language. It has been disappearing from the Scottish Highlands, and I think it will not last out my lifetime. And I said, well, that may be, Ian, but if it does, it won't be because we didn't try. And so we did. And I'm happy to say that Gaelic has, in fact, undergone an extreme reflowering. And there are numbers of schools of Gaelic in Scotland these days, and a lot of interest in the States for people who would like to learn the language. So, it's not dead yet. Thank you.